What are some core leadership principles from your military experience that you see directly translating into the world of continuous improvement?
I mean, we have a whole school that back when I went through called PLDC. It was like a month where you literally just learned to be a leader, how to march people, all sorts of stuff. What are your roles? So going to continuous improvement, leader standard work, you have clear roles and responsibilities in the military in general. None of this continuous improvement is going to succeed without leadership buy-in and them being participants of it and make sure they drive that cultural change, right?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Lean Solutions Podcast. I am one of your 4 co-hosts, Shayne Daughenbaugh. I am very happy to be here. Thanks so much for dropping in either to watch or to listen to this podcast. One of the things that I love about continuous improvement is that it can apply to anywhere, literally from agriculture to machinery and manufacturing to zoology and all the letters in between. But also, the other great thing about continuous improvement is it can be informed by many other things. And what I'm very excited today about our topic is that we're looking at military leadership principles as they apply to continuous improvement. Our guest today is one of the nation's leading experts on metric development, KPIs, problem solving, and process management. Lee Campe is a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma. He brings a vast experience in so many industries, including retail, whether it be online or big box, pharma, medical devices, food manufacturing, healthcare, hospitals, food service, automotive, space exploration, and many more. I'm very excited to introduce to you, ladies and gentlemen, once again back on the show, a U.S. Army Airborne Ranger and father of 2 beautiful daughters, Lee Campe. Lee, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. You finished with space exploration. It reminded me, I trained the Johnson Space Center director and her direct reports. I was extremely nervous because I wanted to bring up the normal distribution, and I was afraid some mad scientist would yell out, "Wrong! The theory of dynamics says otherwise." And so I didn't sleep well that night, but it ended up being all right. So.
No pressure whatsoever there, huh?
I got to see the Mars rover landing live, which was kind of cool.
That's really cool. So, yeah. and if you can just give like one other experience that the rest of us plebes and normal people wouldn't have in your vast experience. I mean, I just mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 more just different industries you've been involved in. What's another crazy one?
I would say the greatest thing about doing Lean Six Sigma or continuous improvement, at least from the consulting standpoint, is the ability to be in a chicken plant 1 week, and then the next week I'm in a bank. Looking at the mortgage process. And then the last few weeks I've been in a steel mill watching rebar be made. But then in between, I did a online session for a company that gets people access to drugs that they can't normally get access to through the healthcare system. So I think the key there in all of that is all industries have mathematical metrics that need to be improved.
Right. Interesting. Lee, one of the things that I remember so much about you, I've only known of you and known you for maybe 2 years now, is right early on, my first introduction to you was about training, Lean Six Sigma and Six Sigma training. And you said something that was just crazy to me, that I never use PowerPoint when I train. I just bring people along. And then you explained to me, the Starbucks experience where you just had, give a quick example of how we can still use training and how you've used continuous improvement to improve your training, but now you don't even have PowerPoint slides.
That's a good point. We should continuously improve ourselves. When I was a director of Lean Six Sigma at Johnson & Johnson, we actually did a Lean Six Sigma project on why projects took so long.
Really?
Yeah. And one of the root causes was it was poorly scoped at the beginning.
Sure.
A bit too broad. But as far as So it was about 2008 where I realized, I guess I became more of an expert on adult learning, and adult learners only retain 5% of lecture. So I've always used Lean Six Sigma training as auto mechanic school. And if you spend a week just looking at screwdrivers and wrenches, but never fix a car,
right?
What have we done? So in your example, I take people to Starbucks and we time how long it takes to get our drinks. and then we come back and apply the DMAIC methodology to the data, and see if we have a problem. And students love it. One, because they get out of the classroom for
Right.
morning. Two, they get free coffee. And then three, it's so much easier to apply the learning to data that you collected versus some fictional data set like in college when we're learning statistics and you have to predict television sales and you've never done it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Get it. I mean, I was just like blown away by that, and then it just opened up, just in my head, all the possibilities of, hey,
yeah.
this could be so much better.
Yeah. And for the online course, I actually have videos of people getting drinks at Starbucks so we can at least get close to
Yes.
recreating it.
Right, right. I love that. I love that. I have to think that some of this may even go back to your days in the Army, because you've mentioned that you served both as an enlisted service member and as an officer.
Yeah.
So let's get into some of these questions here. What are some core leadership principles from your military experience that you see directly translating into the world of continuous improvement?
Well, first off, I want to add I brought props. So I was an
Oh yeah.
airborne. I jumped out of airplanes in the Army. And so I just want to put the beret on correctly so that anytime someone watches a movie now and someone's wearing a beret, this ain't it. It drives me insane to watch the abuse of our beautiful beret by Hollywood. It's interesting. One of the ones that I repeat quite often when I'm training. So when we get to the improve phase, most people have to come up with a little training curriculum to teach people how to do the new thing that they've come up with, the new process, the
Yeah.
new tool. And I'll never forget a drill sergeant would come out in basic training, stand in front of us and say, "My name is Drill Sergeant Jones. I will use the walk-through, talk-through method of instruction." And I remember maybe I was a little too wise for my britches, but I was like, why do I need to know this guy's method of instruction? Now, what I learned later is there was a table behind us, and anybody could come by and grade that drill sergeant on his training.
Oh, okay.
Not us privates, but another
Right,
drill
right, right,
sergeant could come in, a civilian could come in. So I would
right.
say that's step one right there is who's monitoring your training, when's the last time leaders sat in and made sure that people that are providing this information to your employees are providing what they want, or are you just passing your people off to a trainer? But number two, I realize the average high school graduate in America, and I could be a little bit off on the data, but the things I've been reading has an eighth grade education and reads around the fifth grade level. And so then I realized when Drill Sergeant Jones, said on the preparatory command left of left face, I shall pivot my body weight onto the ball of my right foot, just detailed step by step by step instructions. And then you'll notice in Forrest Gump was a genius as an enlisted soldier because he did what he was told to do.
That's right. Yeah.
And so a lot of times when clients were doing projects and we do find that a root cause was that a policy or procedure was not followed, I'm like, you wrote it at an MBA level. Like, of course it wasn't followed. This guy is a good old boy from South Georgia. He graduated high school, reads at a sixth, seventh grade level. That's an insult on the public school system, not on him. So we have to, you're talking about our armed forces who deal with 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids from all different education levels.
Right.
And they have to come up with a training curriculum that can train all of them, pretty much at the same time. Now, don't get me wrong. Every drill sergeant has three or four that they have to spend a little extra time with. I can still remember the names that my drill sergeant would call out. I won't do that in case they're watching, but he would, I'll make up some names. He would burst open the door and go, "All you dumb privates, you know who you are. Jones, Jim, and Bob, in my office now." And what he was saying was, these are the three that I need to put my extra attention on, which is we go to the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule.
Right. Yep.
The 80% can go through the training, no problem, and the 20% will need a little extra help. But I would say that's the biggest thing from being enlisted was the fact that they really did cater to the lowest common denominator. We have a saying in the military, you're only as fast as the slowest person on your team.
Yep.
So the Army was really good about that. And then I would say, where I find the lean culture is really strong is the same thing the military emphasizes, which is building a cohesive team, a cohesive unit. When I went to Ranger School, which has an extremely high attrition rate in the U.S. military, only about 25% of people that go graduate. The first week was spent breaking down your individuality and converting you into a small team.
Hmm.
And later, when we get into leadership principles, one of the things we did was we went a step further and did peer evaluations. So you could actually, enough of you could get together and say, this person shouldn't be on our team anymore, and you were gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh.
I find that's another thing too. I find the civilian market sometimes a little too hesitant to take the bad performer off the team. At some point you gotta, that's where 5S I often find fails is on the sustain side.
Okay. Yeah.
At some point, if we paint yellow lines that say pallet jack and the person can't seem to get the pallet jack there, you got to go if it's that important. And sometimes I see companies just sort of let that lag on way too long.
Right. So and as I'm hearing some of this, who reviews the trainers? How can we make it basic and visual? How can we build that cohesive unit?
Yeah.
I got to think that as you're doing this and consulting all across the country and possibly I've heard even the world, been around in just about any industry. Is your military background and experience? Is it front of mind when you're thinking this? Do you just go, oh, I've seen this, or is it so ingrained that it just comes out, in these different ways that as to how you think?
I would say it comes out in when I'm thinking about a client wants to roll out continuous improvement, and I'm thinking of all the things that need to be done from a leadership standpoint that some companies don't do. Here's a great example. I've seen some terrible root cause analyses in my day. I made a post about it on LinkedIn the other day. For example, lack of training is not a root cause. You have
Right.
to say specifically what the guy didn't do and how it caused the problem. But a root cause and a root cause analysis was they didn't read the email I sent out. Well, in Ranger School, for example, you developed a plan. You then disseminated that plan to your next level leadership. They then disseminated that. They're supposed to disseminate that to the line folks. Just think of a movie, A Guy in a Foxhole.
Sure.
Well, me as a leader, they're in Ranger School, you're evaluated on your leadership ability. So they're watching you, they're grading you, and you can fail and have to redo, 20 days over again. And so one of the things they're watching for is, did I go down to the foxhole and say to the kid, what are we doing tonight? Now, he doesn't have to know all the details. He might just say, we're going up on that hill at 3 a.m. We're going to blow stuff up. But that tells me he knows where we're going. He tells me what time we're doing it, and he knows his basics. And so when I heard that root cause analysis didn't read the email, I'm like, well, when did you go down to the line and ask an operator, tell me what you were told this week in regards to an email? And they go, what email? There you go. You know that the information wasn't disseminated. I'd say that's one of my biggest pet peeves in the civilian market is emails are awareness messages at best, but people use them for action. Well, if action is required, you got to go check and make sure that people are actually digging into the information and understand it.
Right. So it's almost like a twist on, and expounding the idea of a Gemba walk.
Yeah.
Instead of going to watch how it works, you're just going down to where the work is done and confirm that they understand what their duties are for this week or whatever.
Well, I guess using terminology, Gemba walk your information.
Right. Yeah.
It's one thing to go watch an operator make a part, but if you just disseminated some change to the org chart or to a new raw material or something, you should go gauge whether or not they've been made aware of that, especially if their role has an impact on that process. Yeah, I think that's a great term, Gemba the information. I like it.
Yeah.
Let's trademark it.
That's right. I'm writing that down right now so that we can.
You're going to beat me to it.
Gemba walk the information.
Yeah, it's just the number of times people say, well, they didn't read the email. I'm like, well, they got 40 of them, Of course they didn't. Yeah.
Right. So it is 2025. The Army's celebrating its 250th birthday this year. Happy birthday, Army. What lessons from the long history of discipline, I love this, discipline and adaptability, can organizations today apply, in their own improvement journeys?
Well, I will say when you hear some of the folks, the last year that have gone after fraud, waste, and abuse, there's plenty of it in the U.S. military. So I don't know that we're the most adaptable. I would say, Ukraine has really taught what a horrible, horrible thing that is. But Ukraine, if we're talking about adaptability, I think every military in the world knows that they better start investigating drones.
Right.
And I mean, if you're in armor, which is our tank groups, we call them armor. I mean, just this year, everything's changed. The game has changed, right? So, talk about the military needing to disseminate information. But there's always been something that I wish civilians would do more of, and that is we evaluate. Like if you go to a leadership course in the military, they have these little events set up, and they're watching you. There's a creek and there's a broken bridge on each side, and there's some stuff laying around, and they'll evaluate someone's ability to get everybody together and get across and make a bridge. It's very interesting to watch. And when I went through, we had the 19 leadership characteristics of a U.S. Army officer. And by all means, I cannot remember them all, but you're literally being graded on those as they go through it. And I will admit, my transition from being a badass Army Ranger enlisted soldier to becoming an officer, I struggled with number 19 when I went to the ROTC advanced course because I knew everything. I'm a Ranger. I've jumped out of airplanes 30 times. I've been in the woods for 180 days. I've been in all sorts of crazy places. And then here's a college kid that's never held a compass. So I really had to learn this leadership trait called followership. And I wish
Tell me more.
Well, good leaders follow when they're not in charge. And so there was a couple times where I didn't get the best rating because it was like, hey, you tried to take charge. You didn't let him explore his opportunities. You need to step back and let this kid stumble. So for me, followership is really for the senior leaders. Like I've had a senior leader sit in the room and students are pitching their projects. They go, well, no, that one, then we don't need to do that one, or that one won't work. Well, time out. This person does the actual job. You don't know that, like, hear them out a little bit. At least ask, we know, go to the gun, but don't go there and tell people what to do. Go there and listen and ask questions. So to me, that's followership. You're a senior leader, but be a follower for a minute. Let that first shift supervisor who's doing their first project lead you along through the DMAIC methodology or something like that.
Great.
The other one I thought was really cool in Ranger School, like we plant. So basically, you'd just be sitting there in the woods. There's no enemy, but you had to pretend there was. You're in the woods of Georgia. You don't know when your name's going to be called. All of a sudden, Campe, yes, you're in charge. And I mean, the adrenaline just rushes. And you're given a mission and you're graded on the ability to disseminate that information, because if you don't disseminate it, you're going to fail. You're also graded on delegation. If you don't delegate, there's no way you can pass because they give you too many tasks to do at once. So you can see a kid that's going to fail because he's not asking anybody to help him, because you have to make a terrain model. You have to plan the mission. You have to make sure all the information's been disseminated, a lot to do. So if you like the kid, you'll get up and say, hey, let me help you. Let me help you out. But before you leave, you got to inspect everybody, make sure they have their gear on correct. So there's leader standard work in the military, right? Everyone's got to have their gear. I would say a big one today in the woods in Georgia is your canteen full, right? I'm going to shake your canteen. But then what I love about some of the things that at least I was taught is after inspecting my group, I turn to a soldier and say, inspect me. And let that kid go through everything that I just did, to include making sure that I have water. One, because I may have messed up and I don't. And number two, it sends a clear message to the group that, I'm not better than you guys. So in that example, it's like, why don't you do a project yourself, Mr. Leader? If you're gonna have a 25 person Greenbelt class, maybe you can't make all of it. I understand, but what's your project?
Yeah. As you were talking, I don't want to go into it too far detail, but the things you talked about, I have just a sliver of experience with doing GoRuck endurance events.
Oh yeah.
If you're familiar with GoRuck.
Yeah.
And and the things that are just like checking off in my brain, just all the things that they did to teach leadership, break down the individual, to build up the unity, to build that cohesive unit. So all of this is like, yes, I can see this. And I love that you're like then making that transition into, well, this is what it looks like, in the private sector. This is what it can look like for the leaders, how they can be disciplined, how they can find adaptability, for the organizations.
Because we know none of this continuous improvement is going to succeed without leadership buy-in and them,
right,
being participants of it and make sure they drive that cultural change, right?
Right. Yeah. And I love that you finish this sentence, because you said leadership buy-in, and I get that, but not only buy-in, but that engagement, that participation in this in some way, whatever way that they can do that. Super important. And
I mean, if anyone's watched Band of Brothers, you see it in some of the lieutenants that they had. The one that was scared to it. If anyone that's watched it, there was the one that was scared to attack the house and really caused devastation with his group, and then there was the guy that just came flying out of the woods, and everyone's looking at an example. It's not. He was crazy, but they're like, wow, that's a leader. And if you watch that whole show, you know that the soldiers had extremely high respect for that lieutenant. I can't remember his name, but they had some
me neither.
crazy urban legends about him as well, which we don't know are true or not.
Right. So talking about military leaders again, they're trained to make decisions under pressure and with limited information. From the little bit of what I have heard, a little bit of data, how can businesses apply that mindset in times, especially now with times of uncertainty or, like we just talked about, rapid change?
So here's an interesting side story. When I left the military, I was stationed in Italy with what is today the 173rd Parachute Infantry. And Jack Welch decided that he loved ex-military officers. Now, the urban legend is he got the big 12 companies together. At that time, GE had 12 big families. There's 120 companies. GE Capital had the most of them. But there's a tool we can use from a group called Kepner-Trigo, an old school problem-solving tool called the is and is not matrix. What's true about one situation? You use it when you have a control chart that's gone out of control.
Sure.
So you would say, what's true about the time where it was stable that's not true about this time? And I love it. It's called, you look for distinctions and changes. And the point is, if it's true about both situations, then it's not the cause of the problem. So apparently they were this one group was just doing extremely well compared to the others. And the only thing they could pin it on was he said, I am hiring ex-military officers for management positions. And Jack Welch said, I want 30% of all new management hires to come from the ex-military officer ranks. Okay. And overnight, GE actually had their own military officer recruiting department. So I don't think Jack knew what he wanted. I think he just saw the data. But after working Jack Welch has positive traits, negative traits. We can all agree on that. But after working there for 2 years, I realized what Jack Welch wanted was a culture of decisiveness. So listen, when you're in Ranger School, you're given a mission. You've only got a little bit of time to plan. And it haunts me still today because it can lead to some crazy consequences. The number one thing, if I were to Pareto out what Ranger instructors yell about, you will hear them yell, make a decision, Ranger, make a decision. And that means that kid's got like this much time to make a decision. They're not playing. No. Nope. It's like go left or go right, make a decision. And if you don't make the decision, they throw like artillery simulators, and then you have to run like 500 meters with your, you talk about go ruck. We're talking about
we had to carry people like they would, like you just lost a person. Do you want to make a decision now? You just lost another one. Do you want to make a decision now? And we're carrying these people now.
Yeah. So that was the culture at GE, and that's why he was so big on Six Sigma. Was that what Jack Welch wanted was all employees to have access to data. Okay. So you could not hoard data. I, as a black belt, could go to HR and say, I'm doing a project in HR, give me the payroll data. Now, they could code it so you don't know who was who, although clearly the big number is the CEO. But
Right.
They could certainly do their protective stuff, but they had to give you the data. And so Jack really wanted this culture of decisiveness. And I would say, at least during his tenure under Six Sigma, it was a very decisive culture. I don't remember having a lot of meetings where a decision was not made. Um, Now clearly the strategically long-term GE hasn't done great. It looks like they're doing well again, but that's business 101. Whenever someone says, well, the stock price of a Six Sigma company is X and a company that doesn't do it is Y, I'm like, life is not single Y, single X
Right.
analysis. So anyway, but yeah, I would say the big one is a culture of decisiveness. You've got to make decisions. You have to be decisive. I work for another company that shall remain nameless. I'm not joking. I worked there only a year. And I don't remember ever making a decision in a meeting other than to have another meeting.
Oof.
It was just it was a crazy, yeah. That's
What are some of the things from your military, again, the discipline and adaptability that built that sense of decisiveness to make good decisions, not just a panic decision? Like, there's a difference between being decisive in a stressful situation and panicking and just bull China forward kind of a feel.
Well, I would say the Army's emphasis on training and growing leaders. So, for example, one of the things Jack didn't know, but the average, anybody looking to hire somebody, you get a junior military officer, which is basically a lieutenant or a captain that's been in 4 or 5 years. They've had on average 26 weeks of leadership training.
Wow.
No civilian can do that. That's why there's such a great resource to pick up and grab on the market. And because that's always been my struggle. Like, a lot of times people ask, what makes a great Lean Six Sigma black belt? Someone with an engineering degree? And I go, no, a salesperson.
And they go, why do you say that?
Well, because they don't have a problem talking to people and challenging their ideas. It's a salesperson who says, I don't agree with you at all, and let me go get some data to disprove you. It's those things you can't teach, which is not being timid, the ability to challenge ideas, being comfortable to speak with others. Your average enlisted, sergeant, we call them non-commissioned officers. I mean, he's probably had. I mean, we have a whole school that back when I went through called PLDC. There was like a month where you literally just learned to be a leader, how to march people, how to all sorts of stuff. What are your roles? So going to continuous improvement, leader standard work, you have clear roles and responsibilities in the military generally. And then you have very well written, like I was the arms room officer, when I was in Italy, and I had very clear directives of once a month, I had to do 100% inventory of the arms room. By serial number. I had to do this. I had to do that. So clear lines of responsibility, but you just can't make people responsible for stuff and then not give them the training to do it successfully. And so that's where I would say the military does a really good job. And that's some of the videos we'll look at is where we kind of do that.
Why don't you pull one up? What do you got for us?
So there is a manufacturing facility in the U.S. military, and we'll kind of go through the process. I'm trying to think. Do you start with? It's a circular process. So this is the hat of a parachute rigger.
Okay.
And it's basically our Kanban, right? It's our visual signal. If I'm on the flight line, I'm the only guy wearing a hat as people are getting ready to get on a C-130 airplane. And you can see me and you can wave at me. And then you call me over because there's an issue with a parachute. But if we kind of start, let's go circular. I'll present and you can holler when it's up on the, what did you call it? The deck?
The stage, yeah. When we have it up on stage, yep.
So I'm going to share my screen. I've got a little playlist I created for today. And I'm going to go back to the playlist. All right. So this is a jump master. We have a standard. Can you hear me talking?
Yep.
So we have a very clear standard of what we have to do. These are the hand signals. He's going to check the door and make sure it's safe to jump. And there's a checklist that we have to go through. And he can, like the Toyota system, he can stop the jump right there if he sees something wrong. You remember the Toyota way was any operator could stop the line.
Yep.
And so there we go. Going to jump out the door. And then the jump master is going to follow. He's going to make sure everybody went out. And we'll sort of stop there. So now the manufacturing process begins.
Okay.
Let me go back. Hold on one second here to the playlist. So that parachute has been jumped, and now you have the role of the parachute rigger which is to ensure that he or she repacks it correctly. And what I wanted to highlight here is, of course, the use of leader standard work. Every parachute has to be packed the same way.
Sure.
You'll see some great poke yoke devices up here as we get close to it. He's folding the parachute, but I want to get to, you cannot inspect a finished parachute. The only way you can inspect a finished parachute is to open it again, and which defeats the whole purpose.
Defeats the whole purpose, yes.
Yeah. So here you're going to see an in-process inspection. So as you and I know in Lean, the user is the best inspector.
Right.
So he has a visual signal that tells him he's done it right, and that is that he can lift this up and see light at the end of the tunnel. And we have an in-process quality check where a senior rigger is going to come and ensure that he's done that correctly. And he's going to pull this up. The rigger can look in there and see that it's done correctly. And he's just giving an example, and we're ready to pack the parachute.
Okay.
All right, so then we'll go to the next one real quick. Got to do this playlist each time. All right, so I want to give you an actual example of the rigger check. This is a packing a reserve parachute, and I will go to the, let's see, at minute 4:55, he's going to have his first in. So there's the rigger with the red hat. He's going to be your quality inspector.
Gotcha.
And so at minute, and to make sure that this rigger has done everything right. This is an event, but see, he's looking for light at the end of the tunnel there.
Yep.
And if you look over this guy's shoulder, this guy's getting ready for his rigger check.
Okay.
So he cannot move forward until the senior rigger tells him that he has an acceptable level of quality right there.
Gotcha.
All right. And so basically you spend a week, I went through this as an officer. You spend a week just packing parachutes over and over again, and everybody must do it the exact same way. So then that brings us to the life or death process of jumping out of the airplane. And I wanted to highlight this. So again, we talk leader standard work. I can still do part of this in my sleep. I was a jump master in the Army. We are the ones responsible for putting people out of the door safely.
Sure.
Okay. This is one of the hardest courses to pass in the U.S. military. You must inspect 3 jumpers. I believe it's been a while, in 15 minutes. You must call out every error that you find on the jumper, and you must use the correct nomenclature, meaning, I guess in a civilian example, you can't say the scalpel is missing. After surgery, you have to say the stainless steel 174-3 scalpel 3-inch is not in the right spot.
Sure.
So let's watch her do one jumper. And I'm not joking. I know to start with my hands on the left-hand side and go through because you just do this over and over and over again until you get it right.
Missing suspension pad.
So did you catch that? She just found the first error, missing suspension pad.
Chest strap wrapped around the main lift web.
So she can't say chest strap hooked up wrong. She has to use the full nomenclature. Inspecting the reserve.
Hold squat.
That bag between his legs is what we use to bring the parachute back after you've jumped with it.
Oh, okay.
The soldier's responsibility to put it in the bag and carry it off the drop zone. So again, you can see the parachute's packed. All she can do is make sure it's not had some issues in distribution. But you really make sure the soldier has hooked himself up correctly for a safe jump. And you can see her grader to the left.
Yep.
Arch your back. Bend.
Like I already see he's got his twist there.
Saddle inverted.
Very good. So she'll go on. She has to do 2 more jumpers. This is her final exam.
Gotcha.
And then lastly, let's go all the way through to the sort of where we started. Once you get on an airplane, Now think about this. They're in a C-17. You've got maybe 40 people in a line. The people 20 back can't hear a word this guy's saying. So I don't know where we'd put this in lean. Visual controls,
Right.
right? Visual
Right.
controls combine, but every jump master does everything the exact same way. I can still call out these commands even though I've been out 20 years now. We'll just watch a few of these. When they're going to stand up and start hooking up, we'll jump ahead. The soldiers, again, the user's the best inspectors. The soldiers are making sure they have not wrapped the static line around their arm. And then you're also going to check your buddy in front of you.
Yep.
We'll jump ahead a little bit. So they're basically going to go up the line and tell everybody that they're okay. And the guy in front will give a karate chop hand signal. You can hear that's got to be 40, 50 people deep.
Yeah, that is pretty far.
By the way, did you see the little tap?
Yes.
Just a visual confirmation. Again, everything's about doing it right the first time because somebody could die in this. So we'll just jump ahead. Let's see if he opens the door, which is the fun part. Now, so you've seen, and we just came full circle. Lastly, just before the jump, I believe I've got this. So just before the jump, I, as the jump master, where we started, I have to check the door to make sure it's safe to leave. If
Okay.
we look at the Toyota production system, you remember anyone could stop the line when they saw a defect.
Yep.
And so the same holds true for a jump master. He can cancel this whole jump if he sees something unsafe. So this will be this. There's the jump master right there. He's going to go check the door, and we'll stop after that. All right, so I think we got it. So we finished where we started.
Yeah. Interesting.
The big thing in there is leader standard work. Like nobody
Right.
can deviate from anything in those examples I showed you. A parachute rigger can't decide to pack it his own way. And me as a jump master, I cannot change those instructions at any point in time.
Understood. Got you. Okay. So with the time that we have, running close toward the end, I do want to ask at least one question that is immediately applicable. So a leader who's watching or listening today, capturing some of the things you're talking about, but wanting to adopt maybe one or two military leader habits that you talked about that were trained in for the 26 weeks or the full month or whatever it is, if they wanted to adopt one of those to strengthen their team's improvement efforts, what are some things that you might recommend for them to be able to do so?
Well, walk the talk. Again, I started with the beret, but if my soldiers in an airborne unit wanted to take me seriously and I'm walking around like a pizza chef, I've lost, and you see it. I've lost. This is usually the doc that didn't have to do anything Army, but we paid him $300,000 to join. But listen, I've lost all credibility at that point. It's like, if I don't shine my boots, the soldiers aren't going to shine their boots. So I guess I would say be a part of the team. Like you're a leader, but you're still on the team, and then maintain high standards. It kind of goes back to the email. Well, don't just send the email.
Right.
Go out and be honest and make sure people understood it. You could have written an MBA level email that, Joe from South Georgia doesn't have a clue what you're talking about, but he's, not as, especially he works on Saturday and you went home on Friday. So I would say, off the top of my head, be part of the team, set a good example in dress, attitude, tone, Gimba the information, right?
Right. Yes.
And like in my case, do a project. Don't just tell people to do projects, do a project. Ask them about their projects. What can we do to help? That kind of thing. So I think that's the big move now. You'll hear servant leadership.
Yeah.
Although, it's interesting. Sometimes you can be too much of a leader. Like sometimes people like to just do their job and you don't have to be around me so much. You know what I mean? Like I'll finish with my favorite example. We have when I first enlisted, I was an engineer. We had to clean bulldozers and stuff like that in a wash rack.
Okay.
And the wash rack gets clogged with mud. You're washing a bulldozer. And I was a sergeant at this point. I was enlisted. I hadn't become an officer. But I came around the corner. All my enlisted guys were leaning on the railing of the wash rack, looking down in it. It's about 6 feet down. In there was the new lieutenant digging out the mud. And I had to come over and go, sir, I need you real quick. And this is where maybe if you're, a senior leader, you should be open to some feedback from a good employee who you trust their feedback.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I had to say to a lieutenant, sir, they don't want you here working. Notice what they've done. They've all stopped working. They want you to come check. Yeah, no, they're just watching you because they're like, what is he doing? They love that you came and checked on them. Might have brought some water bottles to make sure they're hydrated, but what I'm saying, just strike a balance too. Like sometimes you can be micromanaged too much and then it really frustrates people. Like you've given me a bunch of training, but you won't let me do the job.
Yeah, I do find that somewhat discouraging when we go into a company or an organization, we do some great training, but then they're never able to, or at least not encouraged to use that training in action.
Yeah.
Like, okay, they did their project, great, and then what happens after that? I go back a couple months later and nothing new has happened.
Yeah.
I can't speak to, if they've started incorporating that in their way of thinking and whatnot, but they haven't been given opportunity or encouraged to, hey, we trained you, we did this, go and do it.
Yeah. Well, and then maybe on that note too, as much as we like the business of training, don't schedule training if you don't have an objective and a mission for it. Because you and I both know training for the sake of training doesn't do anything. You just have a bunch of trained people and it's the status quo.
Right.
Don't train me to jump out of airplanes. Never let me jump out of an airplane.
Yes. Yeah.
And by the way, I'll finish. Riggers have to jump their own parachute. Randomly, your parachute is selected once a year and you have to jump it. That way we can make sure you're not sabotaging stuff.
Right. Okay. So in regards to the leadership, the military leadership habit, be a part of the team, maintain high standards in your dress and your talk and in the way you conduct yourself. And I really appreciated the idea of listening to a trusted worker, listening to someone who may be, I don't want to use, I use this term very loosely, but a subordinate,
Listen, I outranked as a young officer the sergeant major, but the sergeant major is an enlisted man, but he's got 25 years in. And if he told me to square something away, like I'll admit, one time I had gotten injured and I was in a Burger King on base in the wrong uniform, and he just straight up called me out. He said, "Sir, you can't be in here dressed like that." And I'm like, like Derek Zoolander, but I've got the black lung. Like, well, with all due respect, sir, get your black lung out of here. So it'd be the equivalent of your employee should not be ashamed to tell a director, "Sir, you can't go out there. You don't have your safety boots on."
Right. Yeah. Excellent. Lee, this has been fascinating to hear. I really appreciate your service, for all the years that you had in there, and then being able and being willing to share it here as it informs continuous improvement.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Is there anything, we always ask, how can people get a hold of you if they're interested in learning a little bit more? You mentioned LinkedIn. Just finding you on LinkedIn.
Well, right? LinkedIn, and I actually wrote an article on some of the stuff we talked about this week. And then I have a YouTube channel. If you just type Lee Campe, Campe, don't leave the E off because there's a comedian Lee Camp, but he's not nearly as funny as me. But I have all sorts of a hodgepodge of different levels of professionalism, but they're all videos that I make mostly for my students to watch post-training, so in case they have questions.
Yeah,
So,
I can attest. I appreciate those videos.
Yeah, good.
I've watched your videos before, so
Yeah, so
they're handy.
Follow me there if you want as well, and
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Okay.
Would be great. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much again. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of another podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed listening or watching. If you have any questions for us, please feel free to comment to these podcasts. Send us an email. You can maybe send a message to Lee if you got some more questions and follow up on what he mentioned. But all in all, we hope you have a great and continuously improving day. Thanks so much.
Thanks.